Hello everybody and welcome to this. It's the first video in a brand new series on William Shakespeare's Othello. Everything I go through in this video comes from Mr. Bruff's Guide to Othello, written by Lindsay Dyer and edited by me, available in paperback on Amazon or ebook at mrbruff.com. Check out the links in the description to pick up a copy. So today I want to talk to you about the origins of the play. You're probably already familiar with the fact that William Shakespeare often based his plays on existing stories. Some of you will be interested in Othello because you link it to Disney's Aladdin, and of course there is a connection. Let's talk about why. The tragedy of Othello, the Moor of Venice, is widely believed to have been written by Shakespeare and first performed in 1604 and was based on a story called Un Capitano Moro, a Moorish captain, by Cinthio, written in 1565. Now, in Cinthio's story, his Moorish general is deceived by his ensign into believing his wife is unfaithful, giving Shakespeare one of the main tragic elements of the plot. However, Cinthio cannot be credited entirely with the story, and Capitano Moro is said to be based on the tale of Three Apples from 1001 Nights, a collection of Middle Eastern folk tales compiled during the Islamic Golden Age, right back from the 8th to the 13th century. In the tale of Three Apples, the man wrongly kills his wife because a slave tricked him into believing she was his mistress, and the slave's proof is a rare apple which the man had bought his wife. It then transpires then that the slave actually stole the apple from a child who had stolen it from his mother, the man's wife, to use as a toy. And throughout this story, the Wazir Jafar, no, Walt Disney's not really a modern-day Shakespeare, has to find the truth or face certain death. Set against a backdrop of military conflict between Venice and Turkey, which took place throughout the latter part of the 16th century, Othello is Shakespeare's modernized version of a tale of deception that has transcended time and cultures. In his version, Shakespeare chooses to retain Cinthio's conflict between black and white, both in skin colour and symbolism, yet his choice of a black man as a protagonist was original. In Elizabethan England, the colour black was associated with moral evil and death, with a Moor, in Shakespeare's earlier play Titus Andronicus, being a villain. However, regardless of the fact that Othello is referred to as a Moor throughout, the importance of his race on his demise is, and has always been, open to some debate. The term Moor was used broadly to describe Africans from various regions, as well as anybody with dark skin, and therefore Othello's actual ethnicity cannot really be proved, and this is exactly why you should not become preoccupied by Othello being a play about race. Othello is much more complex and disconcerting than that. It's a play about the reversal of fortune. It's a politically controversial play that challenges what it means to be a noble soldier during the 16th century. It's a domestic play that highlights the struggle between soldier and wife. It's a play exploring how patriarchal order, class, race, and pride can destroy a marriage and lead to death. Now, let's have a think about this play then as a tragedy. Of course, Shakespeare's Othello is considered to be a tragedy, not just because it has the word tragedy in the title, but because it meets the majority of Aristotle's definitions of tragedy. Aristotle defined tragedy as a play of direct action, told in a dramatic way, containing a character that has a serious fall from a high status position. And this fall occurs because of the character's own fatal flaw, which in Othello's case is arguably jealousy. Aristotle wrote that the whole point of a tragedy is to bring about a catharsis after witnessing disaster strike the fortune of the protagonist. And according to Aristotle, character is not as important as plot in a tragic play. In fact, the character never has any chance of reversing his fortune, as the incidents are not always linked to his personality. Basically, the audience spend the entirety of the play willing Othello to find out the truth and for Iago to be punished, but this psychological torment is a deliberate and necessary ingredient of Aristotle's. He wants us to sympathize with the protagonist. to feel fear and pity, and then to be disappointed at the end, as the mistake is realised just seconds too late. How else would we be taught a moral lesson? But unlike many tragedies, Othello doesn't conform entirely to the Aristotelian tragic form. Firstly, as a black man who has converted to Christianity, Othello cannot be considered high status when compared to the white generals at the time. His commitment to Christianity, as told to us by Iago in Act 2, Scene 3, would also raise questions amongst society, as Moors were Muslim. Othello openly speaks of his redemption after being taken by the insolent foe and sold to slavery in Act 1, Scene 3, and this redemption was possibly his conversion to Christianity. Many audience members would have been fearful of the religion he formerly followed, especially when people insinuate pagan savagery, and therefore would question how trustworthy he is. Secondly, there are hints that Othello is not inherently good, nor does he have a genuine tragic flaw. It's suggested that he perhaps had an affair with Amelia. We'll look at that at the end of Act 1, Scene 3, and that his tragic flaw of jealousy or monomania is not a traditional flaw in personality, because it's not something we can be born with. It's a trait that is developed over time. It's more likely he's a victim of insecurity due to his difference in race, appearance, perceived character, etc., which is emphasized continuously by Rodrigo, Brabantio, and Iago, who refer to him as Moor, thick-lipped, and sarcastically as his Moorship. Othello also emphasizes himself how different he is by highlighting the fact that he's been a soldier since he was 7 years old. Additionally, the subplot of Iago exploiting money from Rodrigo in the hope of receiving sexual favours from Desdemona, interspersed with the visitors from Venice, deviates from Aristotle's one time, one place, one action unities, as does the juxtaposition of the military and domestic backdrops. Finally, Desdemona's murder is not accidental or committed without intent. Othello plots to commit murder by smothering her, regardless of the fact that he believes she's guilty of a crime and he was acting out of honour. Make no mistake, Shakespeare intended Othello to be considered a tragic hero, but he's not the same as Shakespeare's other tragic heroes. Othello is seen to be much more ordinary than a European king like Macbeth, probably because his hamartia is a normal human emotion in comparison to Macbeth's vaulting ambition. Although he has similar military power, his skin colour and race, alongside his journey through slavery, means he has no real status amongst Venetian society. However, he is of foreign royalty, so does have some of the status required to be considered a tragic hero, and a tragic hero he is. Othello falls from his position of hero, loving husband unafraid to speak of his respect of and devotion to his wife, dignified and powerful leader, gifted and musical orator, noble and admirable man, to become a brainwashed, incomprehensible puppet controlled by the jealous Iago. We're supposed to mourn his death and feel sympathy, yet we also feel as satisfied by his demise as we are of Iago's. It is true that not all tragedies end in death, but all of Shakespeare's do. The deaths in this tragedy seem to be a result of Iago's villainous mind games, and one of the most famous quotations about Iago comes from Coleridge, who claims that Iago's soliloquies reveal the motive hunting of motiveless malignity. However, Iago claims he has several motives. He accuses Othello of having sex with his wife. He claims he's jealous that Cassio has been promoted in his place, and he states his annoyance at the fact that Cassio is more attractive than he is. What Coleridge possibly meant was that these motives are excuses for inherent evil and the pleasure he takes from the pain and torture he inflicts on others, evidenced by a lack of a clear plan from the start of the play. Shakespeare deliberately stages most of Iago's actions in the dark or at night, suggesting a clear link to the devil and therefore evidence of his desire to commit evil acts with no genuine motive other than a wish to be involved in the thrill of the deaths of others. Although Othello is a play with many victims and deaths, like all good tragedies, it ends with a resolution. Unfortunately, the resolution of Othello leaves many disturbing and uncomfortable questions with the audience, and one particularly troubling question is whether or not the tragedy in Othello is the fact that Othello, Desdemona, Emilia, and Rodrigo all die, whilst the cunning Iago lives, and the white and handsome Cassio restores order. If you found this video useful, please do subscribe to the channel. Pick up the Othello guide. It contains the complete original text, a line-by-line translation into modern English, and detailed analysis like this.